Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headlee and Dr. Gordon Fimreite, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now, here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Mike Headlee, and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite. Welcome, Gordy.
Hey, Dr. Mike, and welcome, everybody. Today's subject is Breathing 101, Health Benefits and Strategies to Breathing. How you breathe impacts both your body and your mind, and proper techniques really can boost your physical performance and mental well-being. So I'm looking forward to diving into this subject, Dr. Mike.
We both played sports in high school and college and things, and I've taken some yoga classes. I ran a few marathons. You've ran marathons and did things. And for optimum performance, you need to have your breathing dialed in. And you can maybe explain later on about lifting. You know, if you don't get your breathing right, even if it's light weights and exercising and yoga. I've been to yoga class, and I'm not that flexible. And they're going, why aren't you breathing right? Breathe through here, breathe, And so it's just really, really overlooked in regards to health and well-being. So the reason I think this is one of our most important podcasts, and I've said that before, is because I'm going to read a quote from one of my favorite books, Gordy. This is top 5 book I've read total in my life so far. The book Breathe by James Nestor. So in the first part of the book it says, no matter what we eat, how much we exercise, how resilient our genes are, how skinny or young or wise we are, none of it will matter unless we're breathing correctly. The missing pillar in health is breath. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
Great stuff, Dr. Mike. And I know that breathing is so important. Look at the people who have like a sleep apnea, for example. Sleep apnea is in the middle of the night. They miss a breath and they grasp for air as a result. And when they wake up, people with sleep apnea, they'll tell you that they feel just unrested. They're not always mentally clear. And it's a big problem. Of course, people with sleep apnea have a predilection for developing a heart attack or even stroke, and their quality of life goes down and potentially even their lifespan. And then we've all heard stories of people submerged below water and they're revived, but whether they have their full brain function is another story. So that's how crucial it is. And then another thing too, these next two items that most people don't even think of. And we're all in front of computers. Texting is common. And as a result of that, you end up with a forward head posture, also known as text neck or anterior head carriage. There's a scientific study on the National Institute of Health, that's a government site, NIA, and the name of it is The Effects of Forward Head Posture on Focused Vital Capacity and Respiratory Muscle Activity. In our circles, Dr. Mike, we're well aware that if you have forward head posturing, you're not getting the oxygen intake that you need. And a lot of people, if they're in front of computers and in front of texting all the time, they literally develop this forward head posture, and as a result, you decrease your capacity. And the same thing with hunching forward at the rib cage. You just put more pressure on the organs, the lungs, the diaphragm, etc. But there's a real quick test, Dr. Mike, before I hand it back to you, really to validate this ideal of, are you getting enough oxygen when your head is forward? Sit up normally, straight up, and jut your head. Before you do that, take a deep breath in through your nose with your head in the neutral posture and breathe it out. Okay, now make a mental note how that was. Now stick your head way out there and take a deep breath in through your nose again. You'll notice that it's very difficult. So that's just a small example of how it really can affect your breathing. So back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I couldn't get a very deep inhalation when I did that. I got breath in, of course, but it was strained and it wasn't very deep.
Mm-hmm.
And
really
great point.
That's pushing it way out there. But if you're just doing it subtly, it's that subtle decrease of oxygen volume that can make a difference over time, long term.
Yeah, absolutely, chiropractic care. And I'll talk about a little bit of exercise and how to optimize things. Gordy, listen to this. Mammals with the lowest resting heart rate live the longest. The only way to retain a slow resting heart rate is with slow breaths. And we'll talk about optimum breathing, in and out, inhale and exhale, and then I'll give some, at the end, I'll give some really cool breath techniques. I've been teaching all of my patients lately because, like I said, it's the top 5 favorite book I've ever read. It's so impactful, and it's a fun read because it talks about stories and how breathing has been labored or disruptive or blocked and how it changes their life. And I've been telling people only breathe through your mouth when you're talking or eating or with rigorous exercise.
If you breathe through your nose optimally, it's kind of a dehumidifier in ways, which is healthier air than through your mouth.
And they say when we only breathe through our nose, except when we're talking, eating, or really recovering from a high-intensity workout, it creates 6 times more nitric oxide than if we're a mouth breather. And nitric oxide is so critical for optimum blood flow and oxygenation into the body. Zach Bush created a YouTube video called Nitric Oxide Dump. It's a 3.5-minute exercise. You can optimize the nitric oxide in your blood. So that's critical. If you searched online for mouth tape, there's 3 or 4 companies that sell it. I've tried it. Tried them all. There's one that looks like a Band-Aid, one that has white clear lips that match. Then there's a rectangle that goes around your mouth that squeezes your lips. Right now, me and my wife are using white tape. I use the paper tape that's easy to tear. She likes the more cloth, thicker tape that isn't scraping your skin off when you take it off in the morning. And it's one of my favorite things to do because you can't breathe fast, Gordy, when you have mouth tape on because you're only breathing through your nose. And when I start slowing my breath down right away when I put mouth tape on, I get into deep sleep faster and longer. And when we talked to Molly and some other people on our podcast, we talked about monitoring steps and metrics and different things. And I monitored my sleep, and it is super cool not to wake up at night, not to get out of bed, to sleep deep, feel well rested. And I like to sleep on my back now. And I used to snore pretty bad when I did sleep on my back. Now I don't wake up my wife or myself, and then I don't have to hear my wife snoring because she doesn't snore anymore if she does sleep on her back because we have mouth tape, and we both love it. It's kind of weird, and we can talk about it a little bit more, but absolutely game changer. And dental hygienists that I see, they recommend it as well because it dries out your mouth. You get gross mouth when you're breathing through your mouth. And then you said earlier, apnea and snoring and different CPAP machines and things like that when you breathe through your mouth and you get disrupted sleep. And when you keep your mouth shut, there's enough saliva in there so it's healthy for your teeth and gums. So I tell people if you want to try it, just put a piece on during the day first, just because you'll probably cough or clear your throat and you won't die. Some people in the book put a piece of tape this way. Some people put it like I do all the way across. Some people put different strips throughout. I want it simple. I just want to tear a piece of tape up, put it on, and go to bed. I'm not going to make some fancy mask on my face or whatever. And I cough or whatever, and it comes off occasionally. But it's a game changer, Gordy. I love it.
And Mike, I'm assuming that there's some people that will use that product and they can't quite have the full breathing capacity through their nose. They might have some small obstruction, or they have a cold, or some other dynamic as well. Like, for example, when you have a cold, what's your technique then?
You know, I haven't had a cold in a year because I catch it right away. I'll take a sauna, and get my chiropractic adjustment in and take my vitamins, take a hot shower afterwards and clear my nose, put the tape on it, and it just stays open then.
That's
and
great.
so and what's really, really cool, I had a lady who breathed through her mouth only for 40 years. And so during the day, she would start with the mouth tape and go 10 minutes and 20 minutes. And I mean, some The challenge, Gordy, with mouth breathing is then our nose doesn't dilate and you don't get the nitric oxide, and the structures shrink, even if there isn't a deviated septum, even if there is an obstruction and there's small sinus cavities. There's a cue ball size of sinus inside there. That's a lot of space, in my opinion, and we want to moisturize that and breathe through the nose. And so we don't want that to shrink and shrivel up and just be chronic mouth breathers and get this machine that gets moldy and yucky and expensive. That is, then we're forced to use these CPAPs. And so start during the day, and at night, even if you go 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes and have to tear it off or it falls off, most people, my experience is you can just keep it on longer and longer and longer. And it's just a game changer. It opens up your sinuses. You have more energy. I wrote down some things. You have decreased sinus issues, decreased congestion, increased energy, increased immune system, decreased anxiety, decreased stress and PTSD, and just increased oxygen balance with the nitric oxide creation and then CO2. I mean, it's just a game changer, mouth tape, and breathing through your nose, and you don't have to wake up and blow your nose and clear your nose and do all this other stuff, and you don't wake up at night in general. Even if it improves your sleep 10%, to me it's worth it.
That's great. Good information, Mike, and we're going to get into more strategies here, but what I want to do is I want to cover 4 bullet points, because people are probably thinking, well, why is this breathing thing why is it so important? When you're under a lot of stress, your breathing becomes a little shallow, but with proper techniques that Dr. Mike and myself will share, you can get some just slow, deep breaths that can trigger relaxation. And this reduces stress, and it lowers blood pressure, and it also calms the mind. So that's the first thing it does. Number 2, enhance lung function and capacity. So regular breathing exercise really can strengthen lung muscles. Some people might have problems. And if you improve that airflow and oxygen exchange, this can lead to better respiratory health. Number 3 is improved mental clarity and focus. Deep breathing increases oxygen flow to the brain. This will boost mental clarity and focus, sharpening attention and the cognitive ability. And then number 4 is boosting immune system. I mean, you were talking about not getting a cold or a flu in a year. There's breathing techniques that you can do, and research shows that this can enhance the immune system. So that's a huge, and of course the immune system, that is the system that fights bugs and colds and flus and the bad stuff. So those are the 4 points that I just wanted to point out, Dr. Mike.
Awesome. Really, really powerful, impactful. And it's so subtle, but it's really, it's just one of those things. If you're eating well and you're moving well, you're thinking well, and you're sleeping well, all the stuff we've talked about on our podcast, now take everything to the next level by optimizing your breathing. When we breathe through our nose, it creates that parasympathetic rest and digest. So that's so critical to get into deep sleep fast and to stay into deep sleep. When we breathe, in the book Breathe, they talk about the diaphragm is often referred to as our second heart, because when we do these breathing exercises, it lowers our heart rate and our resting heart rate. And when I had a physical a while back, I don't get white coat syndrome meaning my blood pressure goes crazy high, but I get a little apprehensive because I don't like my blood draw, even though I donate blood. I don't like getting checked out medically. So I'm sitting there, I'm closing my eyes, and I'm just doing slow relaxation breathing. And this nurse who was going to check my blood pressure and take my blood, she goes, are you trying to lower your blood pressure with your breath? I said, I think so. I want it to be good, don't you? Is that okay? Is that cheating? I mean, if I do that, whether I'm getting my blood pressure tested today or do it every day before I go to work, isn't that fair game to breathe calm and quiet and easy so my blood pressure is good? You don't want me to do that, and you don't tell other people how to do that? Like, I mean, it's almost like, oh, I felt guilty. It's breathing slow and relaxing so I have good blood pressure. Yeah. People are like, what? Why don't we teach everybody how to breathe slow and easy so they can have better blood pressure? Oh, we're going to do that today.
That's great.
So yeah, I have a few other things like some exercises, how to optimize your flexibility. I have a little bit of a challenge for our listeners. I'll tell people how to use my pacifier, but go ahead, Gordy.
No, Mike, I want to clarify to the audience, just so some of them might not know what the diaphragm, you made reference to the third heart. The diaphragm is kind of shaped like a dome. It's at the bottom of the lungs, and it helps with expelling air as well. When people have the hiccups, for example, they say that it's the spasm of the diaphragm. So just wanted to point that out so people have kind of a reference of what it is. So back to you, Mike.
So one of the question that I have is, why do 3/4 of people that get a sleep test walk out with machines and have sleep apnea? Well, I mean, have you noticed that the last 5, 6, 8 years? That so many people say, oh, I had a sleep study, and you could bet 3/4 or more said, oh, you have sleep apnea, don't you? You're going to start using machine. Well, how'd you know? The short answer is improper breathing. And what's the cause, though? I mean, is it overweight? Is it from just chronically mouth breathing and your sinus passages close up so you lay on your back and you snore and stop breathing? A lot of causes. But what's really interesting in this Breathe book, Gordy, is they came up with several conclusions that humans are the only mammal that really have crooked teeth. There's no orthodontist for dogs, and cats and things like that. I mean, cows and horses, they don't have bad teeth in general. And so early on, humans, they aren't fed right. So number one, lack of a lot of nutrition and minerals. So poor nutrition, toxins and chemicals, and our food is not very good. Hundreds of years ago, it was tough. It was meat. It was root vegetables. It was the fruits and the vegetables and the meats, basically. Now we're eating soft stuff and yogurt and soft granola bars and the meats we eat. We aren't chewing chicken wings and turkey legs and steak and different things like that. It's all soft food. So chewing has a tremendous amount of benefit. Chewing, the more we gnaw and chew, the more stem cells get released, the more bone density and growth will trigger, the younger we'll look, and the better we'll breathe. Because when we stop chewing real food, we start breathing through the mouth, we're deficient in many micronutrients. Our mouth and hard palate shrink, our teeth don't fit, tonsils and uvulas and stuff get all congested back there, and people stop breathing, and it starts at an early age. So basically everything we talk about, getting regular chiropractic care to help our posture and nervous system, eating well, moving well, thinking well, sleeping well, and drinking your smoothie to make sure you get all your minerals and all that other stuff, it just makes sense, and it just helps us live an optimum life, Gordy.
Yeah, that book you're reading sounds great, Dr. Mike. I'll put that on my list. And we cover different subjects each week, and we'll bring books into the forefront. I'd recommend who's ever viewing this is to also just make a note of some of the books that we reference, because there's a ton of information out there. You can really get deep into it. So, Dr. Mike, I have a breathing technique that I'd like to present. Dr. Andrew Weil, I think a lot of people have probably heard of him. He's at 82 years of age now. He's still going strong, but he came out years ago. He was kind of the pioneer and the leader in this field of integrative medicine, which would include the body, mind, and spirit. And he came up with this breathing technique. It's a real simple technique, and you could probably go online and have him demonstrate it himself, but briefly I'll just explain how it's done. So it's called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. He refers to this, by the way, as a natural tranquilizer for the nervous system that calms you down, in other words. So the 4 seconds are basically the inhale. The 7 seconds is holding your breath, and the 8 seconds is breathing it out. What he says is to get in a comfortable position, Breathe in 4 seconds through the nose. Hold it for 7 seconds. And then when you breathe out that 8 seconds, he wants you to kind of push it through your mouth, pucker the lips, make sure that your tongue is on the upper teeth, and that way air can really flow above, below, and around the tongue. So it should basically sound like a whoosh as it's coming out of your mouth. So it should look something like this. 8 seconds. So it's a little bit of a forceful breathing. So again, 4 seconds inhale, hold for 7 seconds, and then breathe out for the 8 seconds. So that's one set. He recommends doing 4 sets. If you want to enhance that, you can go up to 8. He says that this can make a real difference as far as like your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your overall feeling of tranquility. So that's one exercise. I have some more, Dr. Mike, but I'm going to hand it off to you.
Yeah, a couple other things. I think that's wonderful. If you aren't able to sleep and relax, try it. I mean, it works. It's really good. A lot of people love that breath. So thank you for demonstrating that. In the book, they talked about the optimum slow breath rate is 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale. Well, do you have to count and get your phone out and be that precise? 4 to 6 seconds inhale, 4 to 6 second exhale if you want to just working breath, commuting breath, on the phone breath, talking breath. And so that's the optimum rate, but we're going to go through some other breathing techniques. 2 things I wanted to talk about is my Relaxator, Relaxator. You can buy these online, and what it forces you to do is to breathe out, which is a parasympathetic resting part of our nervous system, and you can't breathe out fast with this. So it trains you, I'll demonstrate it, it trains you to breathe in through your nose slow, but breathe out through your mouth even slower, because there's resistance you can build up by putting more resistance in this pacifier whistle looking thing. So I'll demonstrate this.
It sounds like the same as Dr. Weil's technique for when you're breathing out. Might be a good exercise to include with that.
Yeah, and you can tell it's slow exhale. So it really forces you slow inhale, slower exhale. And I'm just a big fan of this. They say it creates some CO2 that really energizes us, and it's really helpful. So this has really trained myself too. And so we talked about on technology in the past, something called heart math monitor that you hook up, heart rate variability monitor, and that tells you when you're in coherence with your breath and your nervous system and your lungs. So that's heartmath.com. You can check out if you like some technology for that. If you go to YouTube and type in Ancient Secret of the Fountain of Youth, there's 5 different stretches or rites or yoga maneuvers that I like it personally because it helps me with my spinal flexibility, and I just feel really good when I do those 5. And then I can sit down and use my Relaxator and just do deep breathing. And since I don't run and do as much high intensity as I used to, it gives me a chance to really, really optimize my flexibility of my spine. And I love those exercises. Ancient Secret of the Fountain of Youth. There's 5 exercises, and I have patients that do it, and they just do it in the morning to get limbered up, getting out of bed. Really kind of a fun thing to start your day with. And then my challenge then I'll let you do your breathing exercises and see if they're the same 2 that I want to talk about. But the challenge I have for optimum health and well-being and longevity is become a slow breather. Slow inhale, slow exhale. But the challenge is see if you can hold your breath for 60 seconds. That's the gold standard. If we're healthy and well, we should be able to hold our breath for at least 60 seconds. And during the book, they talk about deep sea divers, and people have held their breath for 3 or 4 minutes underwater because they've trained themselves to do that. All I'm asking is see if you can hold your breath for 60 seconds.
great information, Mike. Thanks for sharing all that good technology. Here's a couple other exercises. Another one is called diaphragmatic breathing. If you place one hand on your stomach, the other one on your chest, and you basically inhale deeply through your nose, letting your diaphragm expand, and then you exhale slowly. And you can use that device Dr. Mike was talking about. But the key here is this method reduces stress and it improves your oxygen intake. Another one called box breathing. And these are all very similar. I know I like Dr. Weil's technique, probably the best, but all of these are applicable and could be used. Box breathing, you inhale for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then you pause for 4. And this technique calms anxiety and enhances concentration. And then there's the nasal breathing versus mouth breathing. And I think we just talked about this, but nasal breathing through your nose, filters and humidifies the air that you're breathing in. And this can be really a big health benefit. And then one of the other things, Dr. Mike, we talked about this during our podcast for sleeping well and stress reduction. And that's meditation, guided meditation. So you can go on YouTube or Rumble, type in guided meditation for breathing. Sometimes you can do it for breathing with sleep or stress, anxiety, relaxation, insomnia, clarity and focus, or just for better lung function. So there's all these meditation techniques that people are sharing that can have effect on all those different systems. So really good stuff. I think meditation, I think it's underrated, Dr. Mike. Same thing with these breathing techniques. They're underrated. A lot of people don't even think of this as real critical to improving your overall health. And studies are showing, indeed, it does.
Yeah, I watch athletics, whether it's football or a little basketball or I watch the World Series. Really great performance have one thing in common. They breathe right to keep calm and relaxed. Before an athlete is taking a free throw, what do? They take a deep breath in. Before the pitcher is going to throw, before the batter is going to step in the batting box and try to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, they take their deep breath and they're cool and they're calm. They don't hold their breath and they aren't rigid. Singers and dancers and performers, yoga instructors, martial art, Tai Chi masters, they have one thing in common is they really have mastered their breath. And it increases their mental focus and health and well-being and their craft. And so it is really that important. Yeah, the Navy SEALs use that box breathing, I read, that to stay calm and focused in tense situations. So 4-4-4-4 breathing. The last breathing technique I'll just touch on, Gordy, and then I'll let you wrap it up, is there's a technique called breath hold walking. And it increases carbon dioxide, thus increasing circulation in your body. And there's just a lot of benefits to that. And so you go on some soft ground and you exhale all the breath in your body. And then you walk slowly, counting each step. So you don't just take a deep breath in and hold it and go for a walk. You exhale and then walk slowly, counting each step. So once you feel a powerful sense of air hunger, stop counting and take a few very calm breaths. And then breathing normally for a minute, and then you can repeat it. And the inventor of this technique to optimize our energy and focus, he said his record is 130 steps after the exhale.
Wow.
The author of this book, Breathe, he said he did a third of that. And, Wim Hof is in this book, and he talks about his controversial breathing techniques, really inhale and exhale fast, and hyperoxygenation. The bottom line is, if you really want optimum production in anything, you need to have slow, calm, really, really good breath and good lung capacity, 60 seconds. And just think about becoming a master of your breath and see how it changes your physiology and mindset and health and well-being and energy.
I just want to make one more point, and when we breathe in, people are probably thinking, oh, what the actual oxygen, why is it so important? Well, we're nothing more than a cluster of, 36 trillion cells, and each organ is made up of a specific amount of cells. And every time we take a deep breath in, that oxygen is needed for every cell, for every organ. And the reason why is because part of the apparatus for bringing energy, called the ATP, within the cell, oxygen is needed. And then when we breathe out, it's kind of an interesting symbiotic relationship with nature, because when we breathe out, it's called carbon dioxide. Guess what needs carbon dioxide? Trees. Trees need it, for the photosynthesis and everything else, nature. And so it's a great relationship.
So I always finish with, what's your number one takeaway from what we talked about with breathing? And then what's your number one action step that you can take today? Are you going to look up what this relaxator is? You're going to look up that Breathe book by James Nestor. What are some of your other action steps that you can take today? Are you going to... One other thing real quick, Gordy, is the goal is to breathe less than 10 times per minute. That's considered slow breath. If you breathe over 10 times a minute, that's sympathetic stress response, low-level stress in the body, and we have enough other stress in our lives usually. And so the goal is to monitor how many breaths you take per minute, and it should be under 10. Roughly 6
just so
or
people
8.
know, that's actually a vital. Just like your blood pressure, those are called respirations. So good information, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, so have those under 10. See if your lung capacity can go to 60 seconds. Try out some of these breathing techniques that Gordy introduced us to. So with that, what are we going to talk about next week, Gordy?
Well, Dr. Mike, I'm going to put it on the screen so everybody can read what we're going to be talking about next week. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast. Please like our content and click that notification bell. So until next week, we will see you then. Thanks for joining us on the Health Angle Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle Podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.